Motor racing is very glamorous, it's very colourful, it's very exciting, it's got an element of danger about it, there's a smell about motor racing that's sort of animal.
It's over the line together, and it's almost a dead heat.
This is a story of faith and of lives dedicated to a passion.
In motor racing, I think a man is getting to the brink of life and death, perhaps beyond any other activity that man enjoys today.
When Italian racing driver Antonio Ascari died in a racing accident in 1925, his son Alberto was only 7 years old. Despite this, Alberto went on to become a racing driver. He was extremely superstitious and always drove with his lucky light blue helmet. But in Monza in 1955, he wanted to drive his friend's sports car. Alberto borrowed the other driver's helmet, went out onto the track, crashed and was killed, 30 years after his father. Alberto was virtually the same age as Antonio had been when he died. He only lived 3 days less than his father. In 1961, Monza saw the two Ferrari drivers battling for the World Championship, the American Phil Hill and the German Wolfgang von Trips. He was the last driver left of the Ferrari teammates he had joined. Von Trips had the chance to secure the title for himself at Monza and become the first German world champion. But he collided with Jim Clark's Lotus. Von Trips and 15 spectators were killed. Phil Hill became the first American Formula One world champion in tragic circumstances. In 1978, an American racing driver was about to become the Formula One world champion for the second time in history, and again in Monza. Only his teammate, Ronnie Peterson, could prevent Mario Andretti from winning the championship. The start of the race was chaotic, and Peterson's Lotus burst into flames. The other drivers helped him to get out of the car, but his legs were badly injured. Ronnie didn't look to be in life danger, but the following night his condition took a turn for the worse. In the early hours of September 11th, Ronnie Peterson was gone. Mario Andretti became the second American world champion, in a triumph that was once again stained with tragedy. One of the drivers helping Peterson out of the car was Frenchman Patrick Depailler. His idol was Jean Bérat, a French racer in the 50s. Like Bérat, Depailler never won much, but was one of the crowd's favorites. Jean Bérat had died in a racing accident in Germany on August 1st, 1959. And as fate had it, Patrick Depailler would lose his life on August 1st, 1980 in Hockenheim, Germany. Another driver who was one of the crowd's favorites was French-Canadian Gilles Villeneuve. He never gave up, never stopped trying. In 1982, his teammate in the Ferrari team was a blue-eyed Frenchman, Didier Pironi. If Gilles was fire, Didier was ice. In the 1982 San Marino Grand Prix, Didier overtook Gilles repeatedly against team orders, and went on to win the race. Gilles declared a war on Pironi, and their relationship was over. 2 weeks later, Villeneuve was driving like a man possessed in the qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix. Still angry, wanting to beat Pironi, hunting his time. Little by little he approached the back of Jochen Mass's car while attacking the circuit, not realizing that the bigger the march got in front of him, the less time he had left in his hourglass. In a fatal misunderstanding, Gilles' car was blown up into the air. The number 27 he had at the time of his accident was to be forever connected with him, and has reached almost mythical proportions. But as the season went on, it looked as though Pironi was on the way to becoming the first French world champion. In Hockenheim, despite already being in pole position, he still wanted to go out in the wet. He hit the back of Alain Prost's car. His car flew up to the air like Gilles' car before, but this time the car landed on its wheels. Pironi's legs were badly damaged though, and his Formula 1 career was over. The last win for car number 27 was taken in the Gilles Villeneuve circuit in Montreal in 1995, where Jean Alesi took his first and only win. Fittingly, Gilles had also taken his first win in Montreal in 1978. After his Formula 1 career was finished, Didier Pironi had taken up boat racing. In 1987, he lost his life in a boat race in England. Shortly after Didier's death, his widow gave birth to twins, naming them Gilles and Didier. One of the people who died with Didier Pironi in the boat was an adventurous soul called Bernard Giraud. Earlier in the year, Giraud had co-driven Ari Vatanen to victory in a Paris-Dakar rally. For Ari Vatanen, the Paris-Dakar marked a return to motorsport and life in general after a serious injury and a deep depression. The powerful, fire-breathing Group B rally cars that had nearly claimed Vatanen's life had just been banned from world rallying. At the end of the 1984 season and the beginning of the 1985 season, Vatanen and Group B rallying had been on a high, Vatanen winning 5 rallies in a row. But after that, bad luck hit him. Retirements followed after retirements, and in the end came Rally Argentina. Vatanen survived, but recovering physically and mentally took more than a year. Earlier in the year, Attilio Bettega wasn't his luck. Driving car number 4 in the Tour de Corse like Vatanen did in Argentina, he crashed his Lancia 037 and was killed on May 2nd, 1985. 1 year later, May 2nd, 1986, his Lancia teammate and friend Henri Toivonen was dominating the Tour de Corse with the Lancia Delta S4. After years of bad luck and difficulties, the Finn had finally come of age. He had won the RSC Rally the previous year. He had a fairy tale win in Monte Carlo at the beginning of the year. And he was driving with a devastating speed away from the others in Corsica. In a short time, he had become the top man in rally. But like in the Greek myth of Icarus, the heat was getting overwhelming. Group B rallying had gotten out of hand. All the sensible limits had been crossed. Only a small spark would be enough to ignite and change rallying forever. Toivonen's flight was soon to end. On May 2nd, 1 year after the accident of his friend Attilio, Henri crashed. A crash which the cause remains a mystery. The Lancia burned completely. Henri, his co-driver Sergio Cresto, and the Group B rallying with it. 2 weeks after Toivonen's death in Corsica, a young Roman died in France after his Formula 1 Brabham turned upside down and burst into flames. Elio De Angelis came from a rich family, and besides his achievements behind the wheel, he was also a talented pianist. Musical talent among Grand Prix winners wasn't that uncommon, like Gilles Villeneuve had shown earlier, but before De Angelis and Villeneuve, there was a handsome blue-eyed Frenchman called François Sever. He was developing all the time on the wing of Jackie Stewart in the Tyrrell team, a Scotsman who he considered as his idol and mentor.
I think it's very simple. Jackie did all my education, Jackie Stewart. I think every man in the world is looking for that, is to make from his passion his business. That's what I have done. I had passion for motor racing and it's my business. Cannot be more happy. Everything I do about motor racing, I enjoy it. Anything, because it is my passion.
Jackie Stewart was going to retire at the end of the 1973 season, and Sever knew his time would come soon. As they arrived at the last race of the season in Watkins Glen, Stewart had already secured his world championship. It would be his 100th and last race. It was at Watkins Glen 2 years prior, where François had won his only Grand Prix so far. But as the practice day dawned on October 6th, he was driving with the number 6, Terrell 006, and engine number 66. In 1966, a fortune teller had told him he wouldn't live to see his 30th birthday. On October 6, 1973, François Sever was 29 years old and just a few months shy from his 30th birthday. Jackie Stewart never drove his 100th Grand Prix.
One day I realized that it could happen to me. In Monza, 1970, the Italian Grand Prix.
In 1970, Johan Rindt was having the summer of his life. He was dominating the World Championship and set to become the first Austrian Formula One World Champion. The races surrendered to him. He won in Monaco, Holland, France, Great Britain, and Germany. The driver whose career had been unlucky up till then was suddenly having all the luck on his side. But as the summer came to an end, Johan ran out of luck. On September 5th at Monza, he lost his life in the same place where Wolfgang von Trips had lost his 9 years earlier. Johan's summer had been so dominant though that he was posthumously awarded the World Championship, his wife Nina picking up the trophy. It seemed as though some kind of a curse was imposed on Austrian Formula One drivers. 2 years later, in 1972, Helmut Marko lost his eye in France, ending his career. In 1974, Helmut Koenig was killed in Watkins Glen 1 year to the day of François Sever's accident. At this time, another Austrian had risen up to the top of the sport. Niki Lauda dominated the 1975 season and became Austria's next world champion, clinching his title in Monza. Wins kept coming in 1976, and Lauda held a tight reign over Formula One. But all changed at the notoriously dangerous Nordschleife circuit in Nürburgring. Lauda was badly burned, but conscious. In hospital, his condition took a turn for the worse.
I saw myself completely happy and relaxed, falling down backwards into nowhere.
Priest gave him his last rites. Lauda was hanging between life and death.
So I said, if I let go now, I think I'm gonna die. I'm gonna fight whatever I can do to stay alive.
Lauda astonished everyone.
He was back at Monza and he had to have a special crash helmet made, and when he took his helmet off it was full of blood.
He would go on to win 2 more world championships. One of the drivers who had been saving Lauda from the inferno in Nürburgring was an Austrian driver called Harald Erte. He would die in a plane accident in 1982. 2 years later, in 1984, Austria had another promising driver with the potential to stardom, Gerhard Berger. But fate seemed to strike again as Berger crashed badly with his road car. Miraculously, in the following car on the accident scene arrived 2 doctors, and Gerhard's life and career was saved. Another Austrian driver who made his Grand Prix debut in 1984 was Joel Gardner. He would lose his life in the 1986 24 Hours of Le Mans. By now, Enzo Ferrari had spotted another talented Austrian to follow in the footsteps of Lauda, and Gerhard Berger joined the Ferrari team. But in 1989 in Imola, it all nearly ended in an accident that was reminiscent of another Austrian trapped in the burning Ferrari. Berger's front wing had failed, but safety had come a long way in 13 years, and Berger escaped with minor injuries. 5 years later, in 1994, 3 Austrian drivers were going to take part in the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. One of them, Roland Bratenburg. He didn't have much hope of threatening the first places. However, he was living his dream. But like with Berger 5 years before, his front wing couldn't stand the stress of the Imola circuit, with catastrophic consequences. Approaching the corner named after Gilles Villeneuve, who crashed there heavily in 1980, His wing let go and Roland was left as a passenger. Gilles Villeneuve and Roland Ratzenberger were connected by both wanting to appear younger than they truly were. Gilles Villeneuve was born in 1950, but had given 1952 as his birth year. Similarly, Roland Ratzenberger was born in 1960, but changed his birth year to 1962. Now, Ratzenberger would die in a corner named after Villeneuve. Formula One's leading driver and figure Ayrton Senna came to have a look at the accident scene, but nothing could be done anymore to change what had happened. Senna decided to race with a tiny Austrian flag hidden in his car, which he wanted to wave after the race. When Berger had crashed in Imola 5 years earlier, Senna had been concerned for his friend.
They don't phone me in the hospital how I am, and I said to him, I'm okay, but I think this corner it's very dangerous, and I think one day somebody gonna die there. It's too dangerous and should be doing something. But okay, we was talking a bit, and then we went to testing to Imola a couple of months later, and Ayrton and myself say this corner should be changed, and we walked to this corner, and we looked how it could be changed, and we looked over the wall, and Ayrton says to me, but look, Gerd, cannot change this, a rebar behind, so there's no way to move the wall. And we looked both and say, yeah, unfortunately there's a river behind, we cannot move the wall, so that's how it is, and we walked back again. And it was exactly the point where he died.
The third Austrian driver in 1994, Karl Wendlinger, survived his nearly fatal accident at Monaco. But his career was never the same than it had been before. Next up, Spain. And as Damon Hill clinched the emotional first win for Williams since the death of Ayrton Senna, history seemed to repeat itself. Damon was the son of Graham Hill. Like his son Damon, Graham made it to the top of the sport in a relatively old age. But once there, success started to come. However, in the 1960s, one driver was above everyone else. A shy, indecisive Scotsman who seemed to come alive in a racing car. Graham Hill and Jim Clark were to be teammates at Lotus, but the partnership was short-lived as Clark was killed in a Formula 2 race in Hockenheim in 1968.
Jim Clark, der zweimalige Weltmeister und 25-fache Grand Prix-Sieger, ist tot.
In the next Formula 1 race in Spain, like his son later, Graham went on to take a win after the death of a team's leading driver and an icon of the sport. Graham went on to win the World Championship as well at the end of the year. His son Damon wouldn't have it so easy though in 1994. 9 months after the death of Jim Clark in Germany, 200 kilometers from Hockenheim, Michael Schumacher was born. At the end of the 1994 season, Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher would fight for the championship. Before the final race, Schumacher was leading by 1 point. Schumacher won the title in a controversial move that put both him and Hill out of the race. Having won the Indy 500 in 1995, Jacques Villeneuve was ready to step into Formula 1. The 1996 season would be a battle between Jacques Villeneuve and Damon Hill, with Damon winning the title in the last race. In 1997, the championship battle was between Villeneuve and Schumacher. Coming to the last race at Jerez, Schumacher was leading by 1 point again like 3 years earlier with Hill. When race marshal Paolo Ghislimberti died in Monza in the year 2000, it was the first fatality in a Formula 1 race since Ayrton Senna in 1994. By winning the same race, Michael Schumacher equaled Ayrton Senna's amount of wins. Even when the engines stop roaring, the passion keeps on burning. Different heroes come and go, each having their small and precious time in the limelight. But the same passion keeps on burning strong.
Think very carefully, because if you ever start, you will never be able to leave it alone.